Alright, YouTube, now that the election stuff is beginning to slowly wane away, it's time to return to making occult videos. I'm all hyper-caffeinated and excited for this. Trust me, it's been a certain amount of time since I've been able to do this. Time for the occult, video 107, Demons Come to You on Their Own. Now, when I say demons, a lot of people are going to assume I mean like little red-skinned imps or something like that. It's not exactly the most proper understanding of what demons are. A demon is an intelligence, cosmic force you can't explain, some ethereal being. It doesn't really matter how you ascribe it. I don't pretend to specifically know. I've told the tale, of course, when I was younger. When I was quite little. I don't even think I was in elementary school yet. I don't even think I was in kindergarten yet. I saw a demon. Specifically, later on I identified it as Stolas from the Ars Goetia, or something akin to that. Now, I think that if such a being exists, it's only vaguely physical at best, and essentially is capable of various supernatural feats, probably capable of appearing in multiple forms. I think if you look back at all the weird stuff that mankind has said that he saw throughout time, I think that a lot more of that is true than people think. Perhaps the psychonauts are right, and when you take psychedelics, the reason you see some of these weird entities and things is that you've changed your wavelengths or something like that. I am hopefully agnostic on such a topic. It's possible. I remain hopeful that maybe that's the case. Maybe some of the stuff I saw when I was high as balls when I was younger was actually real. Especially the episode with the succubus on Salvia. That was truly entertaining. I'll talk about that some other time, trust me. But in my experience, these forces, you don't command them. If anything, you ask them for favors as a friend or something like that. But you don't attempt to command them. They come to you upon mutualistic terms. I've already spoken of, I took the video down because I was actually slightly tipsy at the time, and my speaking skills were slightly impaired. When I looked at it thereafter, I'm like, yeah, it's okay, like, I'm not just making an embarrassment of myself, but I could have done better, so I took it back down. But I am under a sort of contractual arrangement with this particular being, specifically related to literature, certain YouTube material, and other things within my life. Now, the sort of arrangement that I've drawn up, again, the proof is in the pudding. I do like to observe things before I say, well, it's real or potentially real or something like that. I don't like to just take things on faith. That's why I'm not a Christian. I don't want to worship a deity that has not made himself clear that he exists, and honestly, in a behavioral sense, if you read the scriptures, kind of comes off as a little bit of an ass at times, let's face it, especially with regards to that bald dude who was being teased by some kids and decided to sick some bears on them. They're calling him Baldy, and then, like, I think 20 of them got ripped apart by these pair of bears that came lumbering out of the woods when they were, like, teasing him and stuff. Yeah, I don't think that's exactly the sort of religion that I really want to follow. I think that's a little strange to me. And I say that it's strange as a person who actually practices the occult, let's face it. So, yeah, take it on a token as in, it's nuts. It's lunacy. But in my experience, you don't like form a circle and have a parchment written in your blood and light the black candles and do some long invocation of Belial or something like that to get what you want. Mostly that's theatrical, partially it's metaphor, and in a limited sense it is real ritualism, depending on what tradition you're talking about. The Solomonic tradition, for example, we're talking about the lesser key, the greater key, maybe some of that material. Some of that is metaphor, some of it's meant to be taken literally, and some of it, especially the seals of these various demons, as far as I can tell, has veiled meanings primarily and a literalistic meaning only secondarily. You'd think of the Steganographia as a similar work. It's literally an early work of cryptography. It is presented in the form of a grimoire, but it is not, strictly speaking, an actual tract about how to summon spirits. You can read it on the surface as though it was. If you go beyond that, it's literally about learning. That's one feature that a lot of grimoires and works of summoning have in common. The Grand Grimoire is a notable example. The Petit Albert, not so much. The Petit Albert, which might be soon in hardcover, by the way, for those who are interested, and it seems like several hundreds of you are. That's more of a folk work. That's folk spells, folk ritualism, you know, drive away disease by having the wolf's skull and burning herbs in it, stuff like that. It's the more weird side, sort of the Hand of Glory stuff. The Grand Grimoire, though, has a hidden political message within it. The hidden political message, if you read it, is essentially how monarchy and oligarchy don't work and people should be free, and Enlightenment era philosophy is great and academic wisdom is great, and the church is full of crap, and kings are full of crap. They're all retarded and stuff like that. That's essentially what you get when you read the Grand Grimoire. It's like the most popular grimoire other than the Lesser Key, and people don't even realize that it's basically an Enlightenment manifesto or pre-Enlightenment manifesto. It's very, very funny to see people who don't actually make that mental connection. Because it's right there. It's literally written in black and white for the person reading it to see. They just focus on the parts of it that are about making a pact with Lucifuge or something like that. It's hilarious. It is a real grimoire. It does contain actual spells, actual rites, but it also contains that other, not even in that case, veiled message, and people completely miss it. As far as demons go, though, these intelligences or forces or beings or whatever you wish to term them, and again, I'm hopefully agnostic on that as well, approach individuals because you look at them, you look at like the Ars Goetia, they're human archetypes. They're different types of learning, different types of intelligence that can be potentially imparted through some system or another. So you have one that teaches languages, another that teaches music, another that teaches poetry, another that teaches how to fight and strategy, like military strategy. And Stolas specifically represents herbs and stones and their various properties and some of these things. Natural science, essentially. Therefore, when I realized what this being represented and what I had seen when I was younger, it was quite astonishing because my youth was marked, specifically, by an almost impulsive, natural instinct to learn about herbs, to learn about minerals, and to learn about magic, especially as they involve these things. I know I haven't released any herbals yet, but I've gotten a slew of them and I want to release them. And it's among the material that I've studied the most. The only herbal material I've released was Fruits of Eden, which I wrote myself. It wasn't an edited work. I am intensely interested in these things. I'm intensely interested in minerals. Honestly, I wish that I had enough money to fully stock that backdrop. Everything that's not books would be just a bunch of mineral specimens. I especially like garnets. I actually did order a garnet ring. I'm like, oh, it's time. You know, it's my birthstone. I was born in January. I like garnets. You know, they look like blood. It's just like the most gothic mineral you can possibly imagine. That or maybe obsidian or something like that. Hematite. But yeah, demons, you don't need to call them. This stuff, I follow a variety of occult YouTubers. And coincidentally encounter a lot of other occult material on YouTube anyway, from other people that I don't subscribe to because they're even less entertaining. And these people are talking about, here's how to make a pact with Belial, here's how to make a pact with Astaroth, here's a spell for love, a spell for... And most of that is silliness. Most of it, the idea of making a pact with a demon and needing like an actual scroll signed in your own blood or something to get what you want, that's not really authentic occultism. It all takes off, again, from works like the Grand Grimoire, which have a political and social meaning. The more authentic side of actual magical practice, of the occult, is more about the use of herbs as poisons or as medicines, the observation of nature, synchronicity, memetics, psychology in a rudimentary sense, and certainly chemistry in the alchemical sense. That's the occult. It's wisdom, it's material that is technically mundane, not always necessarily able to be described by then modern science or even now by modern science. It's a stretching forth of man's imagination, essentially, into new realms that aren't quite, they're not fully explained by what we at any time consider modern science. I would say also, and this bears mentioning, the concept of modernity is an illusion. People back in the 1700s thought that they were living in the modern age and that the past was outdated and technologically backwards. They never saw the current era coming. If you go back if you have a time machine, you go back to the 1800s, tell them, oh yeah, soon I'll be able to communicate with like someone in India instantly. I'll be able to see them on a little screen in front of me, like a little glass screen and stuff, and talk to them. And they'd call you nuts. They'd throw you in the nut ward. You'd be given electroshock therapy or put in a straitjacket or something, because they never saw it coming. Likewise, we don't know exactly what we will understand and how in another 100 or 200 years. Much of what we consider to be true now will no longer be considered to be true, and strangely enough, those people that come after us, long after everyone watching this video is dead, will consider this age to be backwards, and they won't see the future coming either, assuming we don't get annihilated by nuclear war. Insofar as demons are concerned, they will choose you to talk to, or to communicate with in some subconscious fashion. They are intelligences, they are archetypes, at least insofar as I understand them. I don't identify demons as being specifically corporeal or even intelligent beings. I don't even really render them to the original Greek daimon or intelligence as being a personified intelligence, so much as just a spirit, a flowing of energy that happens to represent some facet of human ingenuity and intellect. That's really what I relegate them to. So when I say I see a demon, I'm essentially telling you I saw the semblance of what others would identify as a demon in that physical form or mental form. And that coincidentally, again, I believe in synchronicity over coincidence when it relates to such spiritual topics. I happen to be intensely interested, and still am, in exactly the kind of things that this being, or this intelligence, or this force, or whatever you call it, happens to represent in the more authentic Solomonic tradition. This being is probably personified by all sorts of pagan deities as well. That tends to be another thing. When you're looking at the Solomonic demons, especially Ammon, I think obviously, what you're really looking at are pagan deities. You're not looking at demons in the Judeo-Christian sense, in the misunderstood King Solomon, King Moses, and praise the Pope sense. What you're seeing are pagan entities. You're seeing gods, essentially as early man would have ascribed them. These gods were more anthropic. They were limited. They were not all powerful. They had different roles and different powers. A more properly functioning pantheon, in my opinion, than having one self-contradicting deity who both imparts good and evil, and then says that he can't be evil, and tells you what to do, and then curses you for doing it, and things of that nature. I tend to expunge monotheism, or henotheism, as it may be termed, because that's really where the Christian God comes from. Most Christians don't even realize the Jews were henotheists when they dreamed all this crap up. That is, they believed in all these pagan deities. They simply decided that they were all evil except the one they happened to choose to worship. They might as well have chosen Asherah, or some other, or Ahriman, or any other randomly selected being, because they could have done the same thing. Most Christians do not realize that. That's why they fail at magic. They can't really work it because they don't even know the origins of their own spiritual form. They don't realize that these pagan gods were considered very much real in the most strict, intelligent, physical sense by the people who were the progenitors of their own religion. Now, of course, they say, oh, well, our God's the only God. That's not what the Jews were saying 1,000 years ago. They were saying our God is the only good God, and all these other gods do exist. They're not demons, they're not imps. They're there, but they're simply malevolent in some fashion, or they happen to violate what the Jews saw as their moral code, or something of that nature. Also, the Jews didn't really have a conception of the afterlife at the time, for the most part, other than, yeah, you die and then you're asleep. I think Christians are fooling themselves when they talk about their heaven, their paradise, which comes strictly from the book of Revelation. It's very, very funny indeed that these things are believed in. It's all philosophical, it's extra-biblical material, and most of them haven't read enough of their own dogma to even realize this fact. But yeah, demons come to you, not the other way around. You don't need to start flinging spells around and start rambling about how you're going to call on Belial to curse your foes or something, because in the most authentic occult sense, strictly speaking, a secular in a secular manner here from the history, the literary history of the occult itself, like actual grimoires. It's not there. That's not how it's done. You're talking about latter-day material from the Victorian era onwards, usually. When you're thinking of these things, most of it was divine words, divine numbers in the more Jewish sense, folk magic, healing, superstitious sort of incantations and rites as well, that in many cases don't have anything to do with the demon for the most part. Study these grimoires. Read a few of them. You'll see what I'm talking about. Read the Petit Albert. Read the Grand Grimoire. Yeah, it talks about summoning Lucifuge. It also talks about monarchy and the church being evil. It's a philosophical Enlightenment era manifesto more than it is anything else. That's about all. Peace out.